Hey there, it's Renessa, Boley, Layne, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, then you know it is my life's mission to equip you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work you love. Whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing a big idea to life. So today we are going to be talking about insider secrets to the side hustle. So there are three reasons why we're having this conversation today. So pay attention to see how this conversation will benefit you, because I think that there's so many of you listening in, whether you know you're in a side hustle or not, or thinking about a side hustle or not, there's so many goodies that are going to come out of this conversation and I think are going to really bless you. So many of you listening in actually like your job. Like when we think about redesigning our success or creating our perfect work, we usually assume it means that we're going from some job or career or something that you hate to like creating this thing that you love. But the reality is some women are really satisfied in the work that you're doing. You like your company, you like the challenge, you like how you're growing, but there's simply this itching to expand or contribute in a different way, in a broader way that may or may not be related to your current career path. So if that's you, I think this conversation is going to set you free and validate a lot of things that you feel. On the flip side, many of you listening in do want to do something different. Like you may not even know what it is yet, but this idea of having the freedom to check your job and just go, design something new for most of us is not a reality. And if you've got kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, the vast majority of you are going to start doing it as a side hustle. And so if you fall into that category, this conversation is for you as well. And then thirdly, a lot of you are just itching to do something different, but you're not even sure what it looks like. You don't know if it's a career. You don't know if it's a business. You have this kind of talent or thing that you do, and you're just not sure what to do with it. This conversation is actually going to be super helpful to you as well. And so the beautiful woman that is sharing the screen with me is Kelly Nash. And I'm super excited to have Kelly because Kelly works full-time in technology as a success manager at Salesforce. And a lot of us know that company, but she's also a writer. She's an event host. She's a speaker, and she's the founder of a company called Lipstick and Ink. And Lipstick and Ink launched in February 2018. It's a Chicago-based career and wellness blog and events organization that motivates career-driven women to own their power and make their mark. And Kelly's mission is to cultivate meaningful relationships through her writing and consulting to help women navigate their career challenges and realize the potential that they have within themselves. And so Kelly's hot. Like she has been featured in print and broadcast outlets, including International Association of Women, General Assembly, She-Force, The Glue, Cliquish, 6 Degrees Society. She has an advertising degree from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, which is an awesome school, actually. So she's done a lot of things, but here's why I really want to feature Kelly and why I think so many of you are going to learn a lot from her, because it's great to hear from authors and coaches and thought leaders on the strategies to redesign your success, right? But sometimes when you're looking at folks who have been in the game for a long time, they're teaching people and all of that, like you see their name in lights and you can get all inspired, but there's this question around, okay, they can do it, but can I do it? But what's beautiful about Kelly is that she's on the way. Like she's side hustling this thing and she's moving, she's working full time. She's actually happy working full time. She's building something on the side. It's evolving. She's figuring it out. She's pivoting. She's adjusting. She's having big wins. She's having face plants. She's figuring, she's discovering herself. And in doing so, she is adding tremendous value to the marketplace. And so in this conversation, she's going to share so many practical, applicable gems that you too, if you've got some idea, something's percolating, you're trying to figure out where you go, she's going to be such a great resource to be able to kind of start figuring this thing out for yourself. And so with that, I want to welcome you, Kelly, to the conversation, and I'm super glad and excited and appreciate you being here.
I am honored to be here. Thank you for that. And that was an amazing introduction. I appreciate that.
It's true. And so here's my first question for you. I want you to tell us a little bit about you, because like I said, you work full time. You've launched this really cool concept. And I'd love to kind of hear from the horse's mouth, kind of just the picture of your life, what it looks like, because I think a lot of people would benefit from knowing that.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So I have always considered myself a writer. I think ever since I've been able to pick up a pen, I've been scribbling and writing, and so throughout my childhood into my teenage years, I was writing short stories and poems and submitting it for publications and wrote for my high school newspaper. And I was like dead set I was going to go to U of I for journalism. So I was ready to major in that. I took an intro to journalism class, realized very quickly that that was just not going to be the right path for me. Mm-hmm. So I pivoted, right? So I decided that advertising seemed pretty interesting at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I grew even more interested in it as, the more classes that I was taking in college. And so with that, I knew writing was going to take a back seat. So because of that, I realized I still wanted to do some sort of form of writing on my own. So I was creating blogs, I was writing, Facebook notes, if anyone remembers those. They're not really, popular anymore, but writing.
Yeah, I do remember that actually. It was like a minute that they had it. It wasn't long.
Yeah, exactly. They had their moment and now they're kind of just tucked away in Facebook.
Yeah.
So, so I was doing all of that. And then, writing for me was very therapeutic. It was getting me through some of those tough moments of being, entering my 20s. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, as I was sharing my writing, putting it out there, I was really proud of it. I was actually faced with a lot of ridicule and judgment versus the acceptance and support that I was actually looking for. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take this inside a little bit, and then decide to take a creative writing class in college. And then at that point, I think because of all this negativity that was surrounding my writing, I started to really question if I was even a good writer, right? I was comparing myself to other writers in the class, which, is a normal thing. We're always comparing ourselves mm-hmm. to people. And so I think all of that kind of coupled together and me, embracing the real world as I was, graduating college, I just pushed writing to the side. I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. This isn't my career. This isn't mm-hmm. even something I'm passionate about at this point anymore. So mm-hmm. as I entered into the real world, I was making numerous excuses as to why I wasn't writing. I don't have the time, I'm not inspired, or I'm just too occupied, living my life. So years went by, I went through all the quote unquote adulting milestones that you go mm-hmm. through in your 20s, and was hot off my honeymoon in the holiday season in January of 2018. And then, I was doing a lot of soul searching. I was like, you know what? I really like my job. I was at Salesforce at the time. And I was like, I'm fulfilled there, I'm challenged there, but there's something missing. And I knew it in that moment, it was an aha moment for me. I was like, it's writing. I miss it. It's a part of me is missing. And I hadn't really written and put stuff out there for over 6 years. So in that moment, I was like, I need to fill this void in some way. So in that moment, I was like, I'm going to write, I'm going to create a professional blog. I want people to take me seriously. And then it came to a point what am I going to write about? And for the better half of my 20s, I was accelerating in my career, and there's a lot of friends and acquaintances reaching out to me for advice. Hey, can you help me with this career challenge, or can you review my resume? And so I was doing all that naturally because I was good at it and I love to do it. So I was like, you know what, this is the angle I want to go with. And I really want to help women specifically navigate these career challenges and successes. And I felt like I was in a good spot to do that too, because I'm breathing it and living it in the corporate world today. Mm-hmm. So that's my story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because always hindsight's 20/20, right? Mm-hmm. When you're going through stuff, oftentimes we're just reacting to whatever that thing is. But as you look back, when you were doing the writing the first time, mm-hmm. and you were getting all that criticism and people stepping all over your dream, yeah. Do you feel like you were writing to an audience that could appreciate what you were writing? Do you feel like it was an audience that could receive it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, because I think I caught you in the middle of a thought, so I wanted you to.
Oh, no. I was going to say no. I mean, it clearly wasn't the right audience. I was pushing it out and then sharing it on my social media profiles, which is just my family and friends. And a lot of people, one, didn't really care what I had to say. And two, the people that were reading it were kind of being like, you're so deep, like you're way too emotional. And like when we get together, like, oh, did you see Kelly's Facebook note she posted yesterday? It was very childish. And like at that time, it's like everyone's navigating like becoming who they are and who they want to be. And at that point, like I felt like I was coming into my own, but people were shunning me for it. And so I wish in a sense I could go back in time to like just keep pushing through, because I feel like I could have started this venture like so many more years ago and be even farther than where I am right now.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that. And I'm so glad I asked the question because when you were talking about it, what came to mind to me was that she probably wasn't writing to the right audience. She probably wasn't writing to people who could appreciate what she had to say. And for a lot of us, we often, we put our stuff out there, we put ourselves out there, we put our ideas out there, and sometimes we're throwing our pearls to pigs, which is, it's kind of this biblical concept, but we're putting our stuff out there to people who can't appreciate us. They can't appreciate what we're talking about or what we're doing. They can't appreciate the dream. They may not have the mindset for it. They may just, and it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them wrong. It simply means they are the wrong audience. And so my mother used to always say, whenever you're getting advice from somebody or you're getting criticism or anything, she's like, you got to consider the source. Like, where is it coming from? And for a lot of you who are listening in, you have had a Kelly experience. You like, I put my big toe out there. I tried this and, you know, people pissed all over it or whatever. The question you want to ask yourself is, were they even the right audience? Like, were they even qualified to give the feedback that they gave? And if they're not, because feedback's not positive, negative, it's just information. And sometimes you get negative feedback and you should heed it because it's to make you better. So that don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is you've got to be careful of whether or not the people who are giving you that feedback are really qualified, and you got to consider the source, especially if it's putting a stop sign on the dream. If it's refining and making it better and all of that, sure. But if it's a stop sign, that's a big question, because you end up, like Kelly said, she's like, I could have been so much further along. And a lot of us are at places where it's like, man, I wish I had started this a year ago. Or man, I wish I had started this 2 years ago. So I love that point, and I thank you, because I think that's going to set a whole lot of people free. Just that point, they can just cut off the recording now, because it's really, really good. So then what made you decide to actually start lipstick and ink? Like, it's one thing to be like, well, you know, I should start writing again, or I should start doing something. But what made you actually say, hey, I want to go out and I want to do this, you know, this focus and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I said a little bit before, but yeah, I really wanted to focus more around the career aspect, because I felt like there was a little bit of a gap in the market. There are certainly amazing career websites out there, but when I looked at like the influencer, like blogger space, like at this time, I was only considering myself a blogger. I wasn't considering myself like a solopreneur, entrepreneur. This was mainly just a passion project for me more than anything. I just really wanted to have a platform where I could write and ultimately serve others and help others. Like, that was my main mission going in. And, you know, selfishly too, it was like just a passion. It was just something I wanted to do as well. And I think it morphed into something bigger than I ever would have ever expected or imagined as the months went by, because as I launched, I started having brands reach out to me like, hey, do you want to promote this product? And that had never been on my radar. Like, I never thought of this as like a monetization thing or a side hustle. It was purely a passion project for me. So then I started to see the possibilities of putting myself out there and branding myself as this blogger, and outside of just my professional profile of who I am at work. And I was able to also bring that personality and the lipstick and ink part of me into the workplace too. So people at work could also see that I'm not just this like person at work. I'm also a writer, and I'm passionate about helping others. So I think that's really what spurred me to keep going and just kind of letting the things fly where they may, and picking up where I had interest in. So I ultimately then was like, oh, I can like bring these blog topics I'm writing about to life in an event setting and create a community around that and have people come together and talk about that topic. So that was another aha moment that I had. And so I started like, you know, branching out into events. And then I realized, oh, like I have a lot of valuable, you know, stuff in my back pocket. Like, I can monetize some of this. So I created like a resume ebook that I started selling last summer. So things like that. And then I started realizing too, like, hey, I can kind of create a service where I can start reviewing resumes and putting a price tag on, because for so many years I was doing it for free and spending hours upon hours helping people doing that, which I love to do. But it's like, at some point you have to like put a number on your value as well.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of gold nuggets coming out of just that quick comment. Probably going to go in reverse order so I don't forget. For those of you who are listening in, think about the stuff that you do for free all the time, effortlessly, yet at a very, very high level. Like when Kelly's doing someone's resume or helping a friend out or whatnot, it wasn't like, well, this is for free, let me just give a couple of whatever. I imagine like you really went in, like to offer them the best advice that you had, right? Sure. And so for a lot of you listening in, whatever you do for free for people, oftentimes will rival how much time you spend on in the office, or, you know, because you're so committed and so passionate about the quality of what you're going to offer. That's oftentimes a clue. The other thing that I think is really, really exciting and worth taking note of is that Kelly started this as a passion project. Like, she didn't go into this thing with all the pressure of, this is going to be a business and I've got to succeed, and, you know, because there's a whole lot of pressure that comes with that. And one of the interviews we did in the series with Richie Norton, if you guys have heard it or not heard it, when I talk with Richie, he talks about positioning the things that you're doing, the stupid ideas that you have, as projects, because a project kind of has a start and an end. A project is like, well, I'm just going to see if it works. You take all of the risk and the pressure out of it when the identity is not associated with it succeeding or failing. And it's funny because I have a client who does recruiting and some other stuff, and when she started that business, she was like, I just, you know, honestly, if we got like 1 or 2 clients, she's like, I was good with that. Like, to me, that would have been like a win. Fast forward 18 months, they had $400,000 worth of revenue.
Wow.
And out of, I just wanted a couple clients, like, you know, she was just hanging out her shingle and starting out and blah, blah, blah. But the pressure to succeed wasn't there because it was a different level of expectation. And when you're a high achieving woman, it's really difficult sometimes because we're driven to always be on the A game and the next big thing. And when I started my businesses, I had that pressure. There was this, I was in it to win it. And so that meant that every decision was a transaction decision. And sometimes that was okay for the short-term cash, but it wasn't the best long-term decision and all of that. And so it was beautiful that you started this as a passion project without a lot of whatever, because then all these ideas started percolating. Oh, I can do this. And then that became, well, let me try that, as opposed to, oh my gosh, it's gotta succeed, right? And then look, you made far more progress, I think, than you would have if it became the thing that you were like, oh my gosh, this is my business and I've got it and I'm gonna look crazy if I don't make it, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's,
yeah, I think just to add to that too, it's like, it's a privilege that I have a full-time job that, you know, is supplementing a lot of my income. So I think too, when people start thinking about doing something, if they don't like their job, let's say too,
yeah,
I always recommend to aspiring side hustlers to like stay in your job as long as you can, so you have that safe net, right, to like fuel what you want to be doing for your side hustle or your passion project, whatever you want to call it. And then when you feel like comfortable, then take that dive. Like, because to your point, like, there's a lot of pressure from a financial standpoint. If you just decide, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to do this, which I give a lot of people credit for, because there's a lot of successful people that have done that. And I think that's absolutely incredible. But at the same time, it's not always realistic for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to know who you are. There's some people who are really driven by the hustle. Like, the hustle is actually a motivator for them, and they thrive, and they'll, you know, the desperation of it, you know, forces them to raise up. And all of us, when we get, if it's for our kid or something, like, we can muster up strength from where we don't know that we even had in order to be able to deliver. And that's just, I think, the human nature. But then there's some of us that fold under that pressure. And if you know that you're somebody that can't deal with all of the uncertainty of, I'm not sure where my paycheck's going to come from, or this or that or the other, that's not bad or good. It just is. And if you know that that's who you are, then set yourself up to win and have the perspective that Kelly talks about around, leveraging your day work as the fuel for you to do what you need to do, because you'll get real productive on the job, real efficient, real effective, so that you can actually build this thing, but you're not dealing with undue pressure and undue suffering, because there's no gold medals for suffering unnecessarily. There just is not. So know yourself as it relates to that, because then that helps you to decide which decision is best for you, right?
So true.
So help me understand, when you started Lipstick and Ink, what were your biggest fears, or what were your reservations, if you had any, when you started?
Yeah, so I mean, the crux of Lipstick and Ink is like the professional career content, right? But I do have pieces on my blog where I'm being pretty vulnerable and sharing a lot of thoughts that I'm having, like one of which, I wrote a blog post last year where 10 reasons why I'm scared to be a mom. Like, I don't have kids yet, I'm not there yet, but part of the reason why is because I'm scared. And so I came out and shared that, and sharing those kind of posts, I think, are the ones that I'm like scared to push publish. But in fact, I always get the most feedback from those posts. So like I've been scared to like put myself out there, like vulnerably, I can't say that word. But what I've learned is that the rewards are always greater than the fear. I always am able to connect more with people, like people saying, I'm in that same boat, like, thank you, this helped me. Or people that are mothers and are saying, I totally understand your fear, but you'll get there, and you got this, like, whenever you're ready. So I think being vulnerable and like sharing your thoughts and putting yourself out there is 100% scary. But in the end, like, you're going to be able to connect more with people on a deeper level, I feel. So that was like my main fear, I think, going into it. But again, I've kind of learned to overcome that.
Yeah. I love the point, because for those of you who are thinking about doing work that involves helping people to transform in some way, it's one thing if you are starting a product business and you're going to sell widgets, or you're going to sell towels, or you're going to sell whatever, right? You're selling a thing. If you are selling a service, especially if you want to be a coach or trainer, that kind of thing, if you want to write, if you're going belly to belly, heart with people, the marketplace is not looking for perfection. It's not looking for, yes, they want you to succeed and have something that they can aspire towards, sure. But people really want authenticity, and they want vulnerability, and they want realness. And you're right. It's usually the most vulnerable post that you put out there, the face plants, the I just suck today kind of post that people are like, oh, you're so awesome.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that's because, we all have our behind the scenes, right? There's our highlight reel, and then there's our behind the scenes. And so I think that's awesome. And so now, as you've gotten some wins under your belt, what do you feel like you're consistently having to overcome? Because you're evolving in this space, and every time you do something new, it's a new kind of plateau to break. And so vulnerability, you're inching your way through. Is there any fears that you feel like, yeah, consistently I'm having to overcome this as I continue to grow?
I think this isn't the case anymore, but I think right when I started, it was just being authentic, to your point, and being true to like who I was, and staying strong in that, and standing tall, being like, this is who I am, and this is what I'm putting out into the world. It was really hard, especially as I began putting myself out there. Again, like I was mentioning, comparing yourself is like a normal human nature thing. Like everyone does it, we all do it. And for me, I started comparing myself to entrepreneurs, like full-time entrepreneurs. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do more. Like, I need to do more. And I was running myself into the ground to like hustle, essentially, and try to be on the same level as these entrepreneurs. And there was a time where I hit this major burnout episode, and I was like, I cannot compare myself to entrepreneurs that are doing this full time. Like, this is something I do on the side, and I have to like give myself some grace in the fact that I'm working full time, 40 hours a week, and this is just an additional amount of time. Yep. And so that kind of goes into what I'm overcoming constantly right now is like time management. It's hard, especially when you are working potentially over those 40 hours, which I have been over the last couple of months, it's things, I mean, things are going to have to kind of be pushed aside in terms of your passion or your side hustle when your job always will have to come first. So that's one of the downsides, I think, to side hustling, is like, you really have to prioritize your time and make the time, and not make the excuse, I don't have the time. So that's something I'm constantly battling internally, of like, how much is too much work, and making sure I don't burn out again. And also making sure that I'm prioritizing my own health and spending time with my loved ones too, because you don't want to just be like a workaholic 24/7. So
yeah. There's a lot there, and they're real constraints, right?
sure.
So you're right. The beauty of having a side hustle is that there's usually another source of primary income. So there's the security there. And then everything has a price, right? So the price of that is that there's less time that you're actually dedicating to building or creating whatever it is that you want to create.
Yes.
But the comparison bit is huge, right? Because oftentimes you can look at people who are, you know, a few steps ahead and think, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing all of that. And then what people don't realize is that oftentimes those people have people doing that for them.
For sure.
So you see somebody posting, you know, 6 times a day, it's because they have a team of copywriters that post for it. Like, they're not coming up with every brilliant idea and every, like, you're just in the shower making videos to put out there. They've got a whole team of people that are responsible for their social media, or responsible for this, or responsible for that. So you've got to mind your own business and focus on what are the things that are, what's my goal? And then what's the 1 or 2 things that I need to focus on, follow one course until successful, focus on, that's going to make the difference in how you move forward. And there are some things that are going to work for you. And then there's some things that are not, you're not even ready for and don't need. It just makes you look good and feel good, right? But it's not moving the dial in terms of getting revenue through the door. So I love that point. It's super duper important. And I think it's a perfect segue into just talking about what are the practicals that women need to consider as they think about creating a side hustle. And before we get into the practicals, I want to anchor back to where we started, because there's some of you, again, who know that you have an entrepreneurial bent and you know that you want to start a business of some kind. So these practicals are going to be really, really helpful for you as well. There's some of you who love your day job and you just want to expand. And I hope that what Kelly has shared already kind of gives you an idea of how to do that. Like, just take the idea that you have and start putting some action behind it. If you think you want to write something, just start blogging about it. And the more you start doing it, then other ideas will percolate as to how that has, gets to expand. It's kind of like driving in fog. When you're driving in fog, all you might be able to do is see 5 feet ahead of you. You don't even know what's beyond. But once you get 5 feet ahead, then the next 5 feet open up. And so just start doing the thing that's in front of you. Follow the breadcrumbs. And then there are some of you who are like, well, I don't know if it's a career. I don't know if it's a business. I don't know if it's blah, blah, blah. You don't have to know. It's just start following the breadcrumbs. She didn't start out thinking she was going to be an entrepreneur. She started out just wanting an outlet for the creativity that had lied dormant for the last 6 years. And so you don't have to know the answer for that, but you do have to be in motion and you have to be in movement, because then you earn clarity. Clarity's earned. You don't just sit there and like, ooh, I'm going to get clear. You got to get your butt moving. And then in the movement of your butt, you get a whole lot more clear. Okay. So I want to anchor back to where we started so that you know that you can at least take some value from that. And then let's move into some of the practicals that no matter what next looks like for you, it will help you to be productive and effective and to move whatever the ideas are forward. And so, so Kelly wrote a really, really great blog about this. And so if you go to her site, the lipstickandink.com, you'll actually find the blog, and we're going to unpack it here. But one of the really great practicals you have about side hustling is to shift your priorities and make time. You didn't say have time, you said make time. So tell us a little bit about that and how you've been able to navigate through that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I work a typical 9 to 5. I would say Salesforce is very much more you know, they're a tech company, so we do have more flexibility in our schedules, I would say. And I have the luxury too that I'm in Chicago and my team is scattered across the US and across the world. So I don't really have anyone in the office with me like breathing down my neck or like micromanaging me. So that's definitely a positive. But I think, yeah, so I'm typically working like 9 to 5, right? And for me, like I set goals, I mark them down, I give them deadlines in like a tool called Todoist. Found that out from my business coach last year, and it's been awesome just to utilize that, so I have something to work towards. And then from there, what I've done too is I've actually merged like my personal and my professional calendar into one, so that way I can see at a full glance of my week, like where do I have work meetings, where do I have social events, like obviously this is outside of COVID when I was going to events like in person, you know, spending time with my husband or my family or my friends, and then like then seeing, okay, where are there actually pockets then where I can actually dedicate time to my side hustle. So that would either be in the mornings or like on my commute to work, prior to COVID, obviously, time like right after the workday. So right before dinner or after dinner. And for me, I'm a night owl, so I just thrive at night. So I was doing a lot of my work from like 7 to 10 or even later some nights. And then truthfully too, I've utilized my weekends as best as I can too, because I think when you're super passionate about something and you have that drive and the mission and your why is very clear, you're going to want to make the time. So for me, it's like, I've had to like reshift where my priorities are. And sometimes that means like telling my friends, like, I can't go out for drinks tonight because I have to write a blog post, or I'm doing an event with this brand. So, you know, again, like you find the time and you find those pockets of what I call dead time where you are maybe commuting or you're on like a long car ride and maybe you're not driving. So maybe you can do some things on your phone or whatever it is, like you make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of merging your work and your personal calendar.
Yeah.
Because I think the challenge that many people have when it comes to the side hustle is that you do it when you have time. You do it when there's free time, and there's never really free time. And especially if you have a family, if you have children, if you're caring for parents, you have other responsibilities as well. You don't have, like, the time just never miraculously shows up. And when it does, you're usually so exhausted that or you're just fried, right? That the last thing that you want to do is put your mind against that thing, or you're not at your best. Like Kelly was talking about how much she's a night owl. I am the complete opposite. If you got me at 6 a.m., like 5:30, 6 a.m., I'm like, bing! If you come knocking at my door at 4:30 in the afternoon, you're not getting the best of me. I don't even schedule things after 4 o'clock anymore because it's just, and I'll push through and I'll deliver, but I don't like it. I'm not fun. I'm not looking forward to it. But that's just because I have morning energy. I've always had that. And so you've got to think about, when are you best? And so if you're best in the morning, that means you get up earlier. And that means you have to go to bed later. You have to go to bed earlier the night before. Then that's what you need to do. Because you can't be going to bed late and then call yourself getting up early. It's not going to work if you need sleep. Some people don't need that much sleep, right? So you figure out that stuff, but I like merging your calendar together because then you see, like, you can plan to win as opposed to just kind of reacting in there. And so if you know you've got a pocket on Tuesday, and you know you've got a pocket on Thursday, and you know you've got a pocket on Friday, well, that's 3 hours perhaps that you could have dedicated time to the side hustle. And 3 hours of dedicated time is much better than a whole lot of hopscotch piecemealing going around. But you've got to be really, really deliberate about that. I think that's really, really important. You talked about Todoist. How do you can you spell that out for folks in case so that they can look for it?
Todoist.
Got it.
Yep.
You also say, you mentioned this a little bit, so I'm going to unpack a lot of the different things that you said, so we can talk more specifically about them. But you said take advantage of dead time. Expound on that a little bit so that people don't miss that point.
So I guess, you know, when we're outside of COVID, like if you're commuting to and from work, whether you're on the train or, you know, in a car driving, like you could use that time more efficiently to work on your side hustle, or maybe listen to a podcast that can help you learn some tips and tricks to help fuel your side hustle. So that's an example. Another example is like if you unconsciously find yourself just scrolling on social media, like think about how many hours you could spend on social media just like on autopilot, not even realizing how much time you're spending on that. Like I feel like that is such a time suck, and that is definitely dead time. That's just time that you're using to like consume and not really do anything. So I, you know, again, I've tried to really limit my social media, which again is hard, especially if you want to have a social media presence. Like you obviously have to be on social media to post and engage, but at the same time, you gotta like have those boundaries of like, okay, that's enough. Like I'm done with this, turn it off and like move to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's about being intentional, because you're right. Even if you're not a social media person, you might find yourself scrolling around CNN and this and that, and, you know, the news, and it's so, automatic. It's almost unconscious. It's like your finger is
Yeah.
programmed to go to that space. If you're on the commute and you've got to take a train, especially for those of you who have long commutes, you should be doing the side hustle. If that means there's research that you could be doing, there's, you know, connections that you're trying to make. If you've got cell phone service to scroll, then that's time that you should be focusing on. And it needs to be on the calendar, as opposed to you thinking that you're going to remember. If you know that every day you're on the train by 7:15, then there should be an alarm at 7:15 saying, okay, research X, Y, and Z, right? So then now you're accounting for that time where you have it, because then from the time you got on the train to the time you end up at your stop, you might have actually nailed something that was a precursor to you being able to do something else, right? And it was no additional time. It was just time really well spent. So I think that's super important. The other thing you said, let me see here, that I thought was interesting. You talk about being selective with who you spend your time with. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about that as it relates to the side hustle.
So I think like as you create your side hustle and you start putting yourself out there, it's very common to start meeting people that are in your same boat, right? And meeting people that are very much doing the same thing, have the same interests. So again, that starts extending your social circle a little bit. So from there, it's like those are more people that you want to spend time with too. So at the same time, it's like you got to look at like all the people you were spending time with before and start thinking, who do I want to really surround myself with? Especially as I go through this journey, I want to make sure I have supportive people. And for me, I haven't always had the support that I've been looking for from, you know, my friend group or my family or acquaintances, what have you. So I've really taken that and been like, okay, I'm going to spend more time with the people that do support me, who do get it. Because again, that there's a lot more knowledge sharing happening there. Like you're learning more, you're growing. So I think it's important to surround yourself with people that get it and that can help you and that can benefit you too.
Yeah. Redesigning your success can be a lonely journey.
For sure.
If you're not, like, there's some people who are real natural about connecting with folks, and they're natural about asking for help, and it just comes naturally to them. A lot of us are DIYers for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's because you don't want to burden anybody. Sometimes it's because you think there's self-worth issues. You think that what you're doing is not all that important and who would care. And then there's other times you've been dissed, like you've had experiences in the past where people have let you down. And so you've been conditioned not to depend on folks. All of those reasons, as valid as they may feel, put you on an island all by yourself. And oftentimes that is a harder row to hoe. Is that right? Yeah, that's a harder row to hoe to get where you want to go. So definitely surrounding yourself and being intentional about having conversations, asking for help, connecting with folks who are also doing something pretty big, because just being in that presence, whether it's by phone or, you know, chatting every now and again or whatnot, that inspires you. So that's really, really critical. I'm going to hit another point or go back or punctuate a point that you mentioned before. This idea of scheduling time. Mm-hmm. It's not just about scheduling time for whatever your side thing or your idea happens to be, it's about protecting that time. Because I can put it on the calendar and then it's still negotiable. So if somebody else, if I'm having a conversation with Kelly and she's like, okay, Renessa, well, when are you free? Are you free at 1:30? And I look on my calendar and 1:30 is supposed to be time that I'm doing something related to my side gig or the thing I'm trying to create. I'll say, oh yeah, that's free. Because technically I don't have a job responsibility or a family responsibility, but that time is not free. And so I have to have the mindset that that's non-negotiable. It's like I have a date, I have an appointment, and you don't necessarily have to tell people why you're not available. You don't have to disclose that or not. But especially if you have flexibility on your job, a lot of you have, like Kelly mentioned, you have a little more fluidity in your work because it's just about the result and getting it done, not necessarily about the FaceTime of it. And so if you know that, you might decide that in the middle of the day, you're committing to something that's related to your side hustle. But then here comes a colleague that says, hey, are you available at 2:00? Well, you're available other times, but you committed 2:00 because there's a reason for whatever it is that you needed to do. You've got to start to treat this as a business. Even if it's not a business, you've got to treat your project as a priority. Maybe that's a better word so people don't get hung up on entrepreneurship. But usually we don't have the mindset of that. So while the idea is important to us, it's never urgent. And all the urgent stuff always trumps. And then you wonder why 6 months later, a year later, you haven't made any progress. And it's because it's not the priority. Everything in our lives that are priorities, we get done. Always. We just get it done, right? And this has to then raise to the level of priority for you. You talk about focusing on one task at a time, which for high achieving folks, it's like, you got to be kidding me. I'm a great multitasker, blah, blah, blah. Tell us why that becomes a best practice. For you.
It's a best practice, but it's one I'm definitely still working on. It's very hard, especially as a woman. Like, I feel like we're just natural multitaskers. Like, oh, I got this. I can do all this at once. So for me too, it's like, I usually have a bajillion tabs open and I'll start doing something and I'm like, oh, I forgot I need to do this too. So I think, like, again, having it blocked off on your calendar that you're going to do this task at this time helps keep you focused, close out the tabs, turn your phone off or on silence. You don't have the distractions of text or social media. And focus on one task at a hand. So I'm sure you guys have all heard of this. It's called batch working. So it's just focusing on one task at a time and dedicating that time, whether it's an hour or even 20 minutes, right? So that's something I'm continuing to improve, especially like as I'm writing my first book. Like, I have to like stay focused and not be so distracted by everything else going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I love that point because it's usually we have to fail our way to recognize how important that point really is. And one of my mentors, Shanda Sumter, always says, stay in the step you're in. Stay in the step you're in. Stay in the step you're in. And it was such a revolutionary piece of advice. I tell people all the time. I tell it to my coaching members as well. I'm like, stay in the step that you're in. Because oftentimes you can get so far ahead of yourself in terms of where you think you need to go or be or whatnot, that you end up, you only have 100% energy, but your energy ends up 20% over here, 20% over there, 20% over, and you spent 100% of all you got, but nothing ever got completed because it was all piecemeal. Whereas if you stay in the step that you're in and you focus on the task at hand and you get it to whatever level of completion you want to get it to, that's going to make all the difference in you being able to knock off things, as opposed to going long stretches of time and still having things incomplete and undone. That is so discouraging, and it will drive a stake through your dream, whatever it is, career or business. You will not be productive in doing that. So let's talk a little bit as we start to land this plane about the whole self-care bit, because that is really usually very difficult for a lot of people to learn. And we tend to pride ourselves in how busy we are. We pride ourselves in how tired we are. We pride ourselves in how pulled in every direction we are. And so talk a little bit about how to begin to avoid that burnout, because you've been there, I've been there, I think everybody listening has been there. how do we, especially when it comes to side hustle, what are things that we need to consider to manage that for ourselves?
Yeah, so I'm a big to-do list person, right? So like I'll write my to-do list for the day. I write a couple things down, and then let's say like 3/4 of the way of the day goes by and I've finished everything. Like in the past, I'd be like, okay, what else can I do? Right? I've learned to just stop. Like after I've completed my daily to-do list,
Yep.
you're done. Like you can breathe, you can go do something else. And so that's one thing that I've learned. Another thing is just, I don't know, for me, like self-care means going outside a lot, like going for a walk, like being in nature, like that really helps to like calm me down as well, and just get away from the computer, because I work a desk job. And so I'm on my computer all day long on my, at my job. And then obviously like writing and blogging and all this other stuff, it's all on the computer. So taking a step away and like walking away from the technology, that's been helpful. And truthfully, like the social media thing too, I think with the coronavirus happening right now, it's like we've learned that the hustle and the busyness like isn't always the best path, right? Like we've learned to slow down and to say like it's okay to slow down and just be. And I think with the social media aspect for me, like I've stepped away a lot with social media the last couple of months, just because I've realized it was triggering a lot of anxiety, like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. And I think putting that away too is a big, big thing.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of great nuggets that came out of that. An old mentor, an old coach that I used to have said, when it came time to like your to-do list and stuff, he was like, decide on the 3 most important things you need to do today. Just 3.
Yeah.
And once you've done those 3 things, it's a wrap. That's it. It's a wrap. Go have, and he's like, it doesn't matter how long it takes you. If you get it done earlier than you thought, it's a wrap. Go do something else that you want to do. Focus on the needle movers, the things that are going to really move the dial on your business, on your idea, on your project. And what's really interesting is that we can get all caught up on a lot of little things just because we can cross it off and you feel productive. But those were not the things that either move the revenue dial. Those were not the things that move the connectivity dial. Those were not the things that would attract, customers or whatever. So he's like, figure out what those 3 are and then call it a wrap. Because it usually takes you a lot longer to do things than you think it will. And so you're baking in for that. And you usually think you can accomplish far more than you have. So when you have 7 things on your list, that's a problem. So you've got to either delegate it or figure out how to do it. And again, because this is just a part of your life. You still have to be a spouse, or you still have to be a mom. Like you've got all these other hats that you might wear. So less is actually a lot more. So getting out of this idea that you've got to be doing a lot, because doing a lot does not equate to you actually fulfilling and redesigning your success in the way that gets you highly paid to do work you love. You say here about giving grace to yourself. I'm looking at your blog as you were talking, and I wanted to raise that point as well. What does that mean for you? Like, what does it mean to give grace to yourself, and why is that such an important attribute as it relates to self-care?
I think it goes back to what I just said, just about like, I've always been a doer. I gotta go, and giving myself grace to just lay on the couch if I want to, or like get up from my seat and go for a walk. Just giving myself permission that like I don't always have to be working and doing. Like we're human beings, like we also need to just be.
Yeah. So I love that. It's grace to not do, grace to enjoy, grace to delight, right? Yeah. And then there's another element I think that I take from that personally. It's giving yourself grace to try, to explore, to mess up, to fail. Like there's so many times in building whatever I've built, I'm like, well, that conversation didn't go well. And so in the past, I would have been so bothered by that. Like, oh, I can't believe I did, and and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But it's giving yourself the grace to be like, so next time I think I'll say X, right? Because it's not in the perfection of it. It's the, am I willing to show up again? Am I willing to do this again? It was funny because the very first time I ever did an interview series, and this isn't my first rodeo, but the very first time I ever did it, it was a new process I'd never done before. And I reached out to this prominent speaker, and she responded sooner than I thought she would have. And I wasn't prepared, actually, for her to be like, yeah, let's talk about it, you know. So I get on and I'm talking to her, like I'm pitching this idea, and it's the first time I'd ever done it, and it wasn't even really formulated in my head that well. And apparently I didn't show up well, because she was like, I don't think this is a good fit for, like, she just kind of handed me my behind on a plate. It was like, whatever, chick, you know? And I hung up the phone, and all I could do was like laugh about it. I was like, that was a hot mess.
That's okay, right?
It was a hot mess. And I mean, she totally missed out, because it actually turned out to be an amazing event, but I didn't show well, right? And I could look back and be like, oh, I did all these other great things. I can't believe that I didn't show well, and why she didn't, because I did not show well. Like, I just didn't show well. I wasn't prepared. But it was like, I just had to have grace. It didn't mean that it wasn't a good idea. It didn't mean that you don't just pick up the phone and call the next person. It didn't mean any of that. It just meant that I needed to be better prepared. And I mean, I must have waited like 2 weeks before I talked to anybody else. I was like, I gotta get, and I literally sat there in that moment, redid the entire script, the entire pitch, everything. Why? Because I needed to. And so her handing me my behind allowed me to redo this entire thing, and it actually became really, really successful. But I say all that to say, I love the point about giving yourself grace in whatever way that means for you, because it's in the grace that you'll be able to create work you love with much greater ease, right? So let's start to land this plane, because Kelly's got a free gift for everybody that's listening in. And so I want you to share that free gift, and then we'll go ahead and close out the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So it's definitely for like the woman in the corporate world. I created a resume ebook last year. So it's basically a 19-page workbook of all my tips and tricks that I've learned to land me at companies such as Salesforce, which was named, like, I think the #1 place to work in the world back in 2018. So just kind of giving you the tools that I've learned in my career to get me to where I am, and really giving that.
Awesome. And so so everyone that's listening in, you should see a link at the bottom of this video for you to be able to access Kelly's stuff. I cannot recommend it highly enough. A, she is a force for good. B, she's super open and wide and authentic. And if you are trying to learn and get a foretaste into what it's going to take for you to take your idea and really bring it to life, like she's on that path. She's doing the thing. She's adding tremendous value. She's getting lots of visibility. Like, she's doing things that many of you would love to do, and she's inspiring you in the things that you want to do as well. So she's a voice to listen to, a person to follow, someone to learn from, and someone to support. And so the beauty of this series is that I wanted to highlight men and women who I just believe are a force for good that you need to know. And as their content resonates with you, connect to them, just connect to them. And so I cannot, again, recommend her highly enough. Thank you for the gems that you shared with us. We're so excited and grateful. And I'm so delighted that you had the courage such that you're not looking back 3 years from now wishing that you'd gotten out there and started using your gifts and the talents that you've always had. That you're not looking back thinking, I wish I'd started 3 years ago. And you've blessed a lot of people as a result of that. And for that, I am just honored to share the stage with you in that regard.
Thank you. I mean, that was so, like, you're so kind. I really appreciate those words. That was very kind. But yeah, I'm honored to be a part of this, and I'm really thankful to have met you and to be a part of it.
Awesome. So with that, Kelly and I, or on behalf of Kelly, I want to wish you guys all the success and happiness in the world. Whatever that little nugget of idea that is going on in your head, now is the time to do it. Put one foot in front of the other, and let's figure it out. And so on that note, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.